subscribe. Yeah, baby. Sometimes people do things that they just can't live with. Whether it's murder, rape, molestation, or something similar, suicide appears to be the only way out. It is indeed an effective escape route. Just a quick pull of the trigger, a little pinch of poison, or a rapid plummet. All are effective ways to escape what life has in store. Some people, though, just can't tolerate the idea of entering the unknown void. Or perhaps they're afraid of landing in a fiery pit. Some criminals see suicide as a good plan B. They may never intend to follow through with their suicide. The facade gives them just enough time to flee and start anew elsewhere. Unfortunately for these individuals, the arm of justice is often long and relentless. When they're finally tracked down, they may feel the urgency to follow through with this time. Ahead, you will learn about criminals who fake their own suicide in an attempt to escape justice. In April 1991, 33-year-old Prior Wilford Hall was living in Vero Beach, Florida. He was also a disabled veteran. Just 2 months earlier, a suicide note was left at the mobile home park where he was living. The other residents were worried. The questions were put to rest when Hall surfaced 2 days later. As you see, Hall had big problems on his hands. In September, he was charged with sexual battery, lewd and lascivious assault. To him, suicide probably looked like a good escape. Hall just couldn't do it. He returned after 2 days and decided to accept his fate. On March 27th, Hall pleaded no contest to the charges. He posted a $35,000 bond and was freed. His sentencing was scheduled for May 1st. Hall returned home and stewed on his problem. Within days, he would go missing again. He told his friends he was heading to Maine to start a new life with his girlfriend. Hall's wheelchair was discovered at the water's edge, just north of the Fort Pierce Inlet. The front wheels were covered with seaweed. In a plastic bag, detectives found a Bible and empty medicine vials. In the Bible, a suicide note was found. Police weren't buying it. A body was never found. The way that the wheelchair had been rolled on the beach raised suspicion. Detectives quickly figured out the truth. They spoke with one of Hall's friends, and they confirmed that it was all hoax. As you see, Prior Hall and his girlfriend had it all figured out. They had planned it for 2 weeks. They could just flee to Maine and live with Hall's sister. Sure enough, Hall was apprehended in Limestone, Maine. Prior and his girlfriend had rented an apartment. He had dyed his hair. Strangely enough, when he was located, he was not confined to a wheelchair. Ultimately, Hall would not escape justice. In 2016, Michael Patrick Manning found himself in big trouble. He had just pleaded no contest to oral copulation of a person under 14, 2 counts of solicitation of a minor to engage in the preparation of sexual images, and possession of more than 600 images of child and youth pornography. He was scheduled to be sentenced on October the 6th, 2016. Manning had other ideas. He never arrived to court. A day after the scheduled hearing, National Park Service officers near the Golden Gate Bridge found a car that had been rented in Manning's name. A suicide note was found inside. His body was never found. Police were suspicious, but it would be many years before Manning would be brought to justice. Over the years, the United States Marshal Service would barely miss Manning on multiple occasions. In May of 2019, a tip finally paid off. A burglary alarm at the Stock Island Marina in Key West led to a man living in an unlocked storage container. The man identified himself as William Wallace Littlejohn. He had a fake passport and U.S. Navy ID. The man was booked into the Monroe County Jail. Fingerprints would later confirm that the man was actually Michael Manning. Now, Michael will likely be spending a significant amount of time behind bars, where many will agree that he belongs. Anyone who knew him would agree Dana Rex Foster was trouble from the start. His criminal record dates back to 1972. His crimes span coast to coast. He served 6 years in a Florida prison for attempted murder and the near-fatal stabbing of a woman. In May of 1990, Foster was living in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. When 17-year-old Regina Rapinski was found raped and strangled to death, Dana Foster became a key suspect. Police were closing in, and Dana had to do something quick. On March the 5th of 1991, his truck was found on the decaying McKeesport Bridge. His wallet was inside, his jacket near the railing. At his home, a suicide note was found. Police suspected that the suicide was fake, and Dana had fled to Virginia where he had family. This case is a bit different. Why, you might ask? Well, Dana wasn't just fleeing to escape justice. He was eager to feed his lust for blood just one more time. Just a few days later, police and firefighters would have an ominous meeting with Dana Rex Foster. They were responding to a house fire in Virginia Beach, Virginia. A townhouse had caught fire. Dana was in his sister's house next door. Authorities pulled Foster from his sister's house after it filled with smoke. While waiting for his sister and brother-in-law to return, Foster relaxed in a patrol car. Soon, he would find himself riding in the back of a squad car with handcuffs on. On March the 9th, 1991, the body of 18-year-old David Ross was found in an isolated area of Southampton County, Virginia. Ross had been stabbed several times. Foster was stopped in Ross's car 4 days later in Brookshire, Texas. Foster was sent back to Virginia. He was convicted in Ross's murder and imprisoned in Newport News, Virginia. An inmate who served with Foster claimed that Dana told him he had killed a woman in Pittsburgh, about 4 blocks from where he lived. The suicide attempt did not allow Dana to escape justice. However, it gave him the opportunity to murder again. In 2017, Dana Rex Foster was denied parole. The parole board said his release would diminish the seriousness of the crime. The board considered him to be a risk to the community as well. Lucky for me and you, Dana will likely spend the rest of his days behind bars. The memorial service for Decian Thompson was held in March of 2009. Thompson was just 33 years old. He would be leaving behind 13 children. There was just one slight problem. Thompson wasn't actually dead. He was hiding in California after being accused of committing one of the most horrendous crimes Buffalo has ever seen. Thompson believed that the memorial service would throw police off his trail. It didn't work. Thompson was wanted, and nothing was going to stop police from tracking him down. He was accused of impregnating his girlfriend's 11-year-old daughter. Police said that Thompson had forced the girl to engage in sex with him for over a 2-year period. DNA proved that Decian was indeed the father. Soon, authorities learned that he had fled to Sacramento, California. Family and friends attempted to confuse police by holding a fake memorial service in Buffalo. Authorities didn't believe it. He was tracked down quickly. At the airport, Thompson allegedly faked a heart attack. On April the 2nd, he was being held at the Buffalo Holding Center. Dishian Thompson wasn't ready to give up just yet. He had a few more tricks up his sleeve. Thompson wouldn't stay in that holding cell for long. He would soon be found hanging from a bedsheet. Sergeants and nurses would rush to his aid. He would be cut down and taken to the medical center for treatment and psychiatric evaluation. Authorities weren't sure whether the suicide attempt was legitimate or fake. Either way, they knew he was a high security risk. Ultimately, Thompson would recover. He was returned to jail and put on constant observation. After a year, he was moved to a less strict unit. Dishian had nearly run out of options. Next time, his desperation would stun prison authorities. With little going for him, Thompson would make another attempt on his life. This time, there was no doubt he was serious. In June of 2010, Thompson was found hanging from a bedsheet. The sheet was tied to his cell's bars. A plastic bag was placed around his head. The cell gate was closed. This made it tougher for authorities to reach him. Thompson was found unresponsive. He wasn't breathing, did not have a pulse. Dishian's mother said that her son was not breathing on his own. She didn't know if there was any brain activity. Nevertheless, Thompson would survive. He would plead guilty to the charges levied against him. In February of 2011, the thing Thompson feared the most would finally come true. The 34-year-old would be sentenced to 17 years in prison. Thompson might have escaped death, but he could not escape justice. Now you can sleep a little more comfortably tonight, knowing that Thompson is behind bars and your children are safe in their bed. Dr. Robert L. Ignatiak Jr. had it made in Freeport, Florida. He was the only full-time doctor in the town. The nearest hospital was miles away. The locals knew the man as Dr. Bob. He treated everything from arthritis pain to nagging back pain. For over 20 years, he would write prescriptions for Oxycontin and Vicodin. To some, Dr. Bob was a compassionate doctor, trying to help the residents of a small town. To prosecutors, he was a drug pusher who practically addicted an entire community. 3 years after his retirement, Robert was arrested on 54 counts of healthcare fraud and unlawfully dispensing narcotics and other controlled substances. Federal authorities suspected that Ignatiak's prescriptions caused 2 deaths. The 55-year-old doctor was put on trial. Ex-patients took to the stand, saying that Robert had gotten them addicted to certain medications. In the end, he would be acquitted on 11 counts and convicted of 43 others. The jury found that Bob's prescribing led to 2 deaths. Bob was sentenced to 24 years and fined $1 million. Of course, this wouldn't be the end of Robert's story. In fact, it was far from over. Dr. Bob had money, and he was going to do everything he could to get out of his punishment. In 2009, the defense team submitted an appeal for mistrial. The doctor partially won the appeal. The appeals court overturns all the convictions in the first 2 arguments. It does not acquit him of the charges, though. In late 2012, Robert went missing right before his new trial. His car was found. Inside, investigators found a suicide note and what appeared to be blood. Authorities searched the area near the car for several days. They also carried out an aerial search, but nothing was found. Authorities believed from the get-go that Robert had faked a suicide and fled. The doctor was eventually tracked down in Coral Springs. He was handing out flyers for a pressure washing company. The doctor had dropped hard very quickly. After his return, Dr. Bob agreed to plead guilty to the charges. He was sentenced to 20 years for prescribing controlled substances and 10 years for failing to appear in court. Dr. Bob hit it big in a small town where he was allowed to run rampant. He nearly escaped justice. Now he will likely spend the rest of his days in prison. A petition on change.org calling for Bob's pardon has received 125 signatures. Suicide is painless. That is debatable. However, it is indeed painless when it is fabricated. These individuals faced a major dilemma: lengthy terms in prison, suicide, or faking suicide. They tried taking the easy way out. Some tried again. However, most ultimately met justice, one way or another. With just a little more cunning and effort, these criminals could have escaped justice for good. Had you been in their shoes, would you have done the same?